from the podium.
Okay, Councilman Salcido, are they in the room?
I believe so. I can check right now.
You guys all ready to go?
Yep.
Yep.
Yes, they're ready.
So I don't know how.
They are ready to go in the conference room.
Is that what you need, James?
You want to get
I don't know how they're planning on doing this. Hang on.
So while we're waiting for James to come back, we will do the preliminaries. Going to call this meeting to order at 6:32. The study session, funding for water and sewer. And if everyone would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag. Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Carrie, if we could do roll call, please.
Councilperson's greeting?
Yes.
Higgins?
Present.
Yeah.
Kelsey?
Yes.
Parkinson? Ross?
Yes.
Here. Salcido?
Present.
And Mayor Carnes.
Here.
I just wanted them to remember right on their operating budget so people know what they're operating.
Okay, and the purpose of this meeting is a study session to discuss funding options for the City of Lincoln Park's water and sewer capital improvement plan. We were just getting some things underway over what how we're going to be doing this. We're bear with us for just our city manager, James Kuzan. James, are they set to go?
I think they should be just about set to go. I think they were working on sharing the screen here.
So I think you can get up there now.
Yeah, you're probably up and running.
Are we still connected? I don't see anything now, but and I don't hear anybody.
All right,
I'm here.
I hear you, Mike. All right.
James,
we have to share the screen.
You think?
Yeah, I think they've got a PowerPoint set up.
Okay.
I think Donna's running around trying to help them. Getting up on the screen.
Where did it go?
Yeah, call on me. I got my slippers on. Oh, Don.
No. Oh, sorry. No, Don.
That'll work. For some of these charts that,
Yeah, it's a pretty technical document that was sent out.
It was a beautiful document and so much information in my paper copy.
I can see it, but they can't see it because I'm muted out. I can't share my screen.
James should be able to do it if we could get James.
I can
Yeah.
talk them through the document too, Don.
There's the document, but I just got to get him to
What,
share it. So the people
How is our meeting going to progress? How is it laid out?
And John,
Who's
can
going to
we
be
start
speaking?
talking?
So we're gonna have DPS Director John Kazoo, and then John Hennessy and Jim Hollingsworth from Hennessy Engineering to present basically the issues we're facing and the options that we have in front of us.
James, we're ready at this end if you can plug us in.
John is at the podium right now. He says they're ready to go.
We'll tell them to get going.
We're ready. Are we plugged in? All right, we unmuted.
We can hear. Can you
We-
hear John speak? Go ahead.
James, John Kazoo here, DPS Director. Can you unmute the podium microphone?
You may have to unmute Mr. Kazoo.
James, Can you or
Mute.
Mayor, can you ask James to unmute the podium?
Podium muted.
We can't keep doing Zoom meetings. We gotta do live meetings.
Even if you don't have that on there, that's
Whoever's
fine.
at the podium is gonna have to unmute. There you go.
We ready?
Can you?
Bless you, Lillian.
I think we're getting closer.
We're getting closer. I'm trying to share it.
Just say something, Don. I think we heard you.
It just keeps saying host has disabled the sharing of the screen.
Yeah, don't even worry about sharing it.
I
Don't
think
even worry about sharing it.
Yeah, we
Just
can
unmute
put
us.
the document online if we want to.
Okay.
Okay, try it.
At least the viewers will see it live.
Yeah.
I see.
They can't see it. Council can't see it, but they can look it up.
Mayor,
Yeah.
Mayor, John Kazoo, can you hear me now?
Yes, John, but I don't see where your picture isn't on the screen though, but go ahead. Let's get started.
Alrighty, John Kazoo, Lincoln Park DPS Director. What I'd like to start out with, before the mayor and council, approximately a month and a half ago, what we brought to the mayor and council is the city has been asked by Eagle Waterside to present a 5-year capital improvement plan and a 20-year capital improvement plan. What that consists of, they are asking, or we're asking, and we provided to them a copy which included over 4,100 lead service leads contained in the city of Lincoln Park that have to be changed out at 5% for the next 20 years until Lincoln Park changes out all of their lead services. Also included in both of those plans are a 5-year capital improvement plan and a 20-year capital improvement plan for the change out of the Lincoln Park water main system. Both of those are comprised of approximately $3.7 million of water work a year, which again includes water main capital improvement, and inclusive is the changing out of lead services from the water mains up to and through and into the home of those that contain lead water services. I don't know if anybody does recall, but both of those plans were brought before the mayor and council. I'm going to speculate 6 to 8 weeks ago, and we supplied that back to Eagle Waterside in writing. So that's part of the water that we are asking authorization to go back and hire a professional organization to look at both the sewer and the water rate plan or rates for the community. Now what I'm going to do is ask John Hennessy to come up and talk to the sanitary in regards to the issues involved there, and that's a more complicated issue. John, you're next.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. We're sharing the screen right now with our response to the DEQ. I don't know if the Mayor and Council can see that, but I believe the public can see it. Can the Mayor and Council, can you see the report?
No.
No.
Okay. Okay, so I just want to step you through some things, but I'm going to start out with an overview, then go
Let
in.
me interrupt just for a second. This is the same report that was sent out in preparation for this meeting, right?
That's correct, Mayor.
Okay, so we'll be able to go along.
Yep, perfect. And I'll highlight the pages that are that we want to hit upon, and I believe the public can see it now. And I'm going to kind of go through it as a.
Public cannot see it.
Okay. Don thought that the public could see it, so we'll make it available though, so that we can go through it. But what I'd like to do is kind of provide an overview of some of the things that are going on with the sanitary sewer system, talk about the letter received, I believe.
They can see it on YouTube and cable, but not on Zoom.
Gotcha. So the public can see it on YouTube and cable, but not on Zoom. To make that clarification, Don just brought that up to my attention. But go through an overview of what prompted the report and kind of identify kind of our next steps through there. As the mayor and council have known and the public knows, we've applied for a couple grants in the past, starting with the S2 grant and the Ssl grant, and we've been very proactive in the past, really since really about 2011, in trying to analyze the sanitary sewer system and remove some of the excess flows that are coming through there. On April 8th, we received a letter from Eagle, and Eagle is the Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy, which was the former DEQ, which outlined a number of discharges that we've had from our retention basins into the Ecorse Creek. What happens with our system is when we get too much water, it backflows up into the Emmons and Lincoln pump stations. We then pump it to the retention basin. It is then lifted into the retention basin. Those excess flows are stored in the retention basin until the rain has subsided. If a rainfall is substantial enough that the rain continues, Mr. Kazoo will discharge into the Ecorse Creek excess flows through there. And it was designed for that type of a setup. We notify the DEQ within 24 hours of the discharges that are present through there. And so the numbers that the DEQ has from the dischargers are numbers that we provide to them through there. And what's happening is Eagle has written us a letter identifying a number of discharges from 2016 to 2020. I'll go through those a little bit later when I get into the report. But Eagle is under a new permit with FEMA and the EPA. How it works in a very global sense is the EPA issues permits to each state. They'll issue a permit to the state of Michigan for them to issue permits to wastewater treatment facilities. It's a retention basin, but it's considered a wastewater treatment facility. And that's why it goes back from 2016 to 2020. They're now in the process of starting this permit. And so some of our response components will be incorporated into that permit through there. But we had they originally wanted a response from the city June 1. We had a meeting with Eagle and the authors of the letter identifying some of the things that we were going to present within the report, and they agreed to a July 1 meeting through there. And so that's what was submitted through there. So going through the report kind of quickly, there's 6 components to the table of contents. There's an introduction, which kind of provides an overview of the historic work that's been done to date. We summarize the SSO events. SSO stands for Sanitary Sewer Overflow Events. We identify physical corrective measures that have been done to date. Then we identify what's referred to as a historical flow monitoring program. And then we have an SSO corrective action plan, and then we have an SSO corrective action plan schedule through there. And the report is fairly detailed. It's a very kind of a technical a report through there that really goes to the technical arm of the DEQ through there. We have had Mr. Kazoo has just left the room, but he has spoken to the people at Eagle, and they're very happy with the report. They realize a lot of effort was put into it, and they're going to get back to us in about 6 or 7 months, they said, after they've had a chance to review it and provide a response. I would like to just go through it kind of quickly and then answer any questions about the report, and then talk about some of our next steps through there. So as I mentioned, the very first introduction is just an overview on that. But one thing I would like to point out is on page 4 of the report. is where we did an assessment of the criticality of our assets. And what that means is you look at the probability of a failure score multiplied by the consequence of a failure. And so you can look at all of your assets that are present through there. And to let you know what's an asset is like the Emmons pump station is one asset. The retention basin is another asset. The Lincoln pump station's an asset. So, and those types of things. And you can see the number of, on page 5, you can look at the number of assets within the retention basins. There's 177 were evaluated, so we had 2 at low, or 77 at low, 100 medium, and 0 at high through there. And that was demonstrating all the work that we've done. And so all of that, the detail for all of that information is really within our SAW grant submittal that we've already submitted into the agency for there. So that kind of provides an overview that we have a very good idea of what our needs are. And I'm going to go through this in the corrective action plan, and I'll circle back to that on what are the assets that have to be addressed within the first phase, 0 to 5 years from now. On the second portion of the report is a summary of the Ssl events. So you can see in that area that we've identified 7 SSO events that we don't feel qualify as a true SSO under the state agency's mandate of it. And those are SSO events that could happen during a snow melt, that are off season for the summer events and things like that. Whether or not the agency is going to agree with us on that, I don't know, but we mentioned it in our conference call with them prior to submitting the report, and they realized that there is some justification to that. I will identify 2 substantial events that we had. One was on February 20th, 2018, where 130 million gallons was discharged through there. Well, there's extenuating circumstances for that particular event. What we realized was that we had a sewer break under the Ecorse Creek, and we were so the Ecorse Creek was essentially free flowing into our system. And then that was going to the pump station and then to the retention basin. And the retention basin holds 20 million gallons. Well, 20 million gallons isn't really a lot when you come into the volume of the Ecorse Creek, to be candid. And that's why our discharge was so large at 130 million gallons. And the second extenuating circumstance was on 3/1/2018. Our discharge point was blocked. And so we were having high water with very late rain events, high water in our pump station. So we realized something was wrong, and we couldn't unblock the outlet, the restrictor, until the flows had subsided. And so those are 2 events that within the 7 that kind of demonstrate that every once in a while things can happen that result in SSOs, and the agency, Eagle's, well aware of that. And then the next thing we've talked about are corrective actions implemented to date, and that's on page 8 through there. And you can see it kind of identifies all of the work that's been done since 2011. We've spent approximately $8.1 million on there. We've cleaned and televised, a number of approximately 250,000 feet of our sanitary sewer system. Full-length liners, we've done approximately 60,000 feet through there, and sectional liners, we've done approximately 188. And so you can see the difference between the full-length liner and the sectional liner, that lots of times, because of the age of our system, that we're having to do full-length liners as opposed to sectional liners. Sectional liners are pinpoint areas that can be addressed through non-intrusive means, But our system is at an age where we have a lot of structural concerns about it that requires the full-length liner through there. And you can see that we have certainly made quite an effort as a community to not only look at the problems that's facing the sanitary sewer system, but we've addressed them too. And I think that the Eagle is well aware of that. And I think that the fact that they have not issued this letter earlier is a testimony to that, you know, because they go back from 2016 to 2020. So they've been a good partner of ours in this approach. They've been hand in hand on things that we've presented to them on how we're going to address things. And because we've been very diligent and very proactive, they have kind of taken a soft approach to it and issued the letter when they really had no other alternative to do there. But on the next is the historical flow monitoring program, and that's on page 9 of the report, and that provides just a schematic overview of how the system really works. And I know it's a bit confusing through there, but it provides kind of basically that, you know, we have a number of discharge points through there, but where the retention basin comes into play is with the Emmons pump station and the Lincoln pump station, and you can see we identify a weir. A weir is a flow wall, and so what that is water gets up to a certain point, and if it doesn't crest the wall, well, no water will go to the retention basin. Once it crests the wall, then it does go to the retention basin. And then when it's stored in the retention basin, we have an outlet into the River Drive interceptor, and we're allowed to discharge our basin when the plant is able to take the flows. So we can run into situations where we cannot discharge into the basin and another rain event happens and we end up with an SSO. So we're storing from the first event, a second event happens, we can't release our flows into the River Drive interceptor because the sanitary sewer system of the DUA treatment facility can't accept them at that time through there. So there's a lot of things that are involved with the SSO through there. But the next page is page 10 provides the sewer districts within the community, and these are in the appendices that I don't really. I can address with the public later if you'd like, or we can go over a little bit later. But we have sewer districts basically A through L through there, and we look at the ones that we've monitored. A few of them we've monitored a few times with flows just to see if we can figure out exactly where maybe some of these excess flows are coming from within the community through there. Now, this is on page 11 is an important page that I want to focus on. We have, based on the flow monitoring that we've done since 2011 to 2020, we have broken all of the sewer districts into 3 categories: red, blue, and yellow. Red being districts that have the highest I&I that were present. I&I is, and you also see it referred to as RDI&I. That's rainfall-derived inflow and infiltration is what that stands for. So the red ones are, I identify a number of sewer districts. There are 5 sewer districts within that are red. Within those, there are a number of sites where we feel that we can remove the most of our I&I. And then the blue is, they're a medium priority through there. And then the yellow is a lower priority through there. I do want to identify that when we talk about I&I, it's inflow and infiltration. It's often considered about 50% public and 50% private. And what I mean by that is private is inflow and infiltration that are coming from footing drains, from people's homes, and things along those sources. So what we're proposing to tackle with the agency are the public I&I. So the leaks within our own system and things along those lines, and they're on board with that. We've identified on page 12 all of the within each district or within each category, red, yellow, and blue, how much I&I is being present in each. So this I&I that you see there, so if you look at on page 12, it says Area L, it's Site 25, it's Kings Highway. There's 16.1 million gallons of I&I through there. We are looking, half of that is public and then half of it's private. So what we would be looking to tackle would be 8.05 within the public category. If you look at the very last sentence, it says the goal will be to eliminate 20 to 35% of the inflow and infiltration of the public system. And we've identified that range to give us some leeway with the agency through there. So that might be a comment that they come back to us and say, we want it between 30 and 35%, not 20 and 35%. But, it's based upon what the findings that we find in the field through there. So 5 is the corrective action plan through there. And what we really talk about are a number of improvements that are pretty specific to different pumps within Emmons, within Lincoln Pump Station, our other pump stations through there. We talk about generator replacement, station renovations. The Lincoln and Emmons pump stations were constructed in, I believe, 38 and 42. So they've exceeded their life cycle. And those are some of the critical infrastructure components that we need to really address within the next 3 to 5 years to prevent a catastrophic condition within our system through there. On page 16, I want to identify the very last comment, which is very important. It is the financial capability assessment. And as Mr. Kazoo had mentioned, we talked about a rate study, but we're going to do a rate study, and it's going to be based upon the EPA's guidelines, and it's identified there for community financial capabilities and assessments. So we've put together a overall capital improvement program for 20 years for the collection system and the assets, the pump stations, retention basins. And we've identified what type of expenditures we're looking to do in a perfect world. But that table will be modified based upon our ability to afford it. And that's why that's important through there, which may extend that capital improvement plan out longer than the 20 years through there. 6 is the corrective action plan schedule through there. And that's just kind of an introduction that basically looks that we are looking to perform the asset management plan in 5-year cycles, essentially. So we go from 0 to 5 years, 5 or 6 to 10, 11 to 15, and 16 to 20 through there. And our annual investment to eliminating the I&I will be based on the city's ability to afford the investment based upon our rate study that comes through there. One thing page 18 is really the page that brings out exactly what the improvements are, and I'll go through that. But one thing I do want to mention is in presenting this to the DEQ through there, they understand that we have needs, and our approach with the agency has been to tighten up our system rather than spend more money to build an extended basin. The option could be, well, just make the basin bigger. Instead of making it 20 million, make it 30 million gallons, and then you won't have any SSOs. Well, we're going to be doing ourselves a real disservice, though, because we will still be needing to address the structural deficiencies within the system through there, and the agency's in agreement with our approach through that. So that's some of the reason for that phone call that we had prior to our submittal into the agency. And I was very happy that they were on board with that type of approach through there, because that just creates a lot of problems. And another thing I would like the council to know is that Eagle understands the complexity of this system. This is really one of the more complex systems probably around, because it was a combined system originally, and then it was separated out, and we have a number of different bulkheads. A bulkhead is where you block a pipe up, where it comes, the two pipes come together and you kind of wall it up with a wall. Some of those are failing, things like that, which are resulting in the I&I through there. So we're confident that if we can get this type of capital improvement plan through the agency, that we'll be able to tighten up our system to prevent SSOs. And that's really our goal through there. I will go through basically the years real quickly of what we're looking to spend. We're currently in, it starts out year 2020, and we're currently in a program of $1.5 million doing full-length sectional and cured in place pipe replacement through there. Then we identify between 21 and 26 some retention basin improvements, collection system improvements. Two critical things, though, that really have to happen within this time period are the Emmons pump station and the Lincoln pump station through there. Some of those other ones can be dependent upon our ability to afford this. But those are each scheduled at about $4 million each station. They're very similar to one another. So what we pay for one will probably be what we pay for two, but our engineer's estimate for full cost is around $4 million. 2027 to 2032, we deal more with the collection systems improvements more than anything. Those are the areas that are going to be blue through there. So the first sequence were the red areas, the districts. These will be the blue districts. And we could get to the point, if we're very successful in eliminating I&I from the red districts, that we can modify this a little bit and maybe not do quite as much improvements to the blue districts, or extend that capital improvement program out. And then 2033 to 2038, we identify the Riley Avenue lift stations and the Mark Avenue lift stations will have to be addressed. And then on 2039 to 2044, it's all collection improvements. And by that point, we would have replaced our critical infrastructure, lift stations and pump stations through there. And then there's a series of exhibits. Exhibit A, it kind of identifies exactly the two areas done with the S2 grant and the SAW grant. You can see that the S2 grant focused only on the sanitary sewer. The SAW grant allowed us to focus on the storm along with the sanitary. So we were able to get a little bit more deeper information from that than we were with the S2 specifically. But you can see we have done about 2/3 of the city have been under study really since 2011. And then we have the manhole inspection data. That's a lot of detailed tables that are really presented really for the agency's review only, just for completeness. We wanted to demonstrate that we have been very proactive in our approach to this. And then we provide a series of overall maps that kind of shows the different areas that we have within the sanitary sewer system, different size piping through there. And then the last graph is kind of a color-coded graph that demonstrates our the districts, the sanitary sewer districts within that approach. So the state is looking for a 20-year capital improvement plan. It identifies approximately $37 million for that, and we're looking to spend about $17 million is going to be on critical assets, and then about $20 million will be spent on the collection system itself through lining projects and things along those lines through there. And they are looking for us to really have a good approach, break our areas out so that we can remove the problem areas as much as possible through there. But the one thing I did want the council to know is they are probably looking for us. They're going to respond in about 6 months, they think, to us. There are a number of communities that are in the similar boat as us. but they're going to look for us to do maybe an administrative court order for this that will identify what types of improvements that will be done so that they have the ability to provide, to guarantee that, we're putting our mouths where where we say we are. We're doing what we're saying we're doing. But that comes much later on. That comes after, our accessibility and our affordability component through there. And it's a fairly typical thing. The advantage to that, though, is it does provide us a little bit of coverage that we are working, and the state has accepted our plan, and it does help provide some risk assessment mitigation to us with basement flooding in that regard. And I know that was a lot of information, and so I'm here to answer any questions or turn it back over to James.
Okay, James, you want to comment before I open it up to council?
If I may.
Let me check with Mr. Kazan first.
Okay,
If anyone has anything to add,
I'm
James.
sorry.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I hit all of his points.
Okay, tell you what, Council President, go ahead.
I just, and when he's talking about this administrative court order, so in other words, this is a pledge that we're saying that we will do it, we have to do it. Then my question is, will we be required to float bonds? Will we be required to ask Treasurer if we can get some money? How in the world are we going to finance it? Does it all have to be in this court order, all of these various amounts and pledges, whatever, all of it's outlined and it's ironclad?
It's a living document, to be honest. It's a court order that's going to be in place for the 20 years, and there are look back periods during it with Eagle, so that if we're doing things and they're in agreement with our approach and our ability to afford improvements, then the court order can be modified with both parties in agreement. But what they're afraid of is that communities just will not, I'll be honest, take it seriously. And then they're going to be, the state of Michigan is going to be in violation with the Clean Water Act with the EPA. And so that's kind of how it works. But it's meant to be a living document where if we are successful in removing a lot of the excess inflow and infiltration, we're able to, we can change it and maybe not shorten it up maybe, that we're not under it quite as long through there. But it's a document that is reviewed really on an annual basis with the Eagle to make sure that everything is moving forward. So everything we will be doing will be in concert with Eagle.
Okay, so it's actually almost like the consent decree that we got from Fikens regarding the retention basin.
It's very similar to that. Yeah, it's actually modeled after that approach. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anything else from council?
Just a question. Go ahead, sorry.
Go ahead, Bill.
With those releases into the Ecorse Creek, we have alarms and sensors and stuff that give us that information. Am I right?
That's correct. We've kind of gone through that. That's the very first thing we did. We verified our numbers through there, and we ran modeling based on the storm that occurred and the conditions that were present, and we came right within 3 to 5% of those numbers. So we're right. We're confident that those numbers are accurate.
Okay.
The alarms went off.
Yes.
Okay. Was Councilman Kelsey, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I got a question for John. John, I don't know if this is part of it or not, but that the creek hasn't been drained or modified for as long as I've been in the city. And I know that's a different department. That is the department of that's over the rivers and lakes and all that stuff. But what I'm getting at is that some of the stuff that we have that's natural runoff can't run off into the creeks because the creeks are so bogged down with not being maintained with trees and all that stuff. Does that have anything to do with it, with the consent agreement, or they're just looking at us as far as a city with our infrastructure, and anything that affects us, they could care less as long as we get our act together and basically get the system going? I guess I'm asking the question is, isn't there a partner in this where they're supposed to do their part to make sure as we discharge or as runoff goes into the creeks and that, because the Kilford drain was supposed to be underneath some kind of lawsuit, and I guess that guy kind of settled out of court, but there was supposed to be some kind of lawsuit. I remember I got taken down as a property owner down to Wayne County out by the airport to talk about an assessment, and it never happened because that drain was so messed up. It didn't drain properly. There was no way for the runoff water to get into the creek because of the trees and debris. Or is that two separate issues, John?
John Kazoo here. Councilman Kelsey, to answer your question, there are two separate bigger problems.
Okay.
The Saxon Kilfoyle and the Ecorse Creek have bearing on our storm system draining our roadways. That in and of itself is an issue because right now the Great Lakes, the Detroit River, all of the Great Lakes, the Detroit River, and also the streams and creeks that empty into those bodies are above flood stage right now. So we're having problems getting our stormwater to drain off because of those issues. But going back to the retention basin, and I think it was an earlier question, what about is our retention basin an automated or an alarm system? The answer is yes. The retention basin fills up approximately 20.5 million gallons when our sanitary system is overtaxed and we cannot put it into our contracted capacity into the intercept or going to the wastewater treatment plant located in Wyandotte. When that does happen, everything backs up and surcharges and goes to the Lincoln and Emmons pump station. Then, as John Hennessy said earlier, it goes to the retention basin. When those three retention cells at the retention basin fill up and they go up and over a weir wall, at that point in time, the city cannot stop that system from draining into the Ecorse Creek. It fills up, goes over a weir wall, and it goes out by a gravity process. There are no buttons, there are no valves that we can or cannot turn. It's an automated system. And when they do go over by state statute or the state law, we have the responsibility to report to Eagle and other agencies when we start to go over. And then within 48 hours, we have to report back to them once we've stopped draining into the Ecorse Creek.
Thank you, John. I was just, I guess this other question is for John Hennessy. John, is because of the fact that the infrastructure for most of the cities has been neglected for whatever reason, are there any grants or issues from the state that would help, or low-grade bonds that would, or loans that would help out if we have to go that way? Because if I'm not mistaken, the entire country is that way, and not just us in Lincoln Park. And the fact of it is that doing the lead service lines, which is another issue, but the cities are given mandates without any kind of money. I mean, not this mandate, but other mandates, which takes away from us to have to pay for these mandates, I guess is what I'm saying. Is there any what do you call it, relief from the state to apply for anything, like we did the SAW grant?
Not at this time, unfortunately, Councilman. They are talking about an infrastructure package, at the national level. What that means, I don't know. Obviously there's a lot of focus on bridges lately, but the approach has been from the federal government and the state government is that it's the locals' responsibility to do it upon rates in those types of things. So what we would be looking at are things that we're well familiar with. SRF funding for the sanitary system, and then DWRF funding for the water system, which are low-interest loans. The advantage to that is you're paying back over a 20-year period. The users that are using that infrastructure, so let's say we rebuild both Lincoln and Emmons Pump Station. It's an $8 million investment on our part. Well, we're going to pay that over a 25-year period through the SRF program. We'll get low-interest loans. The way the government views that is that the users that are using that asset will be paying for it. So if I live in the city today, I'm paying for it, but I move out or what have you, and somebody else moves into my house, well, then they're picking that portion up and they're using it. So there's, but historically, infrastructure has not been there for sanitary and water unless there's been very large national public acts. For example, the Clean Water Act in '72. There were a lot of basins or wastewater treatment plants built in that era because they went to a much more intense cleaning. They went to what they call a tertiary treatment process, which is common today. But unless something like that happens, I don't see that, Councilman, to be honest.
Well, thanks, John. I'm all set. Thank you.
John, with it, we're going to wait for the date of the report.
But
when one report is accepted, then we're going to have to figure out what stages we're going to attempt to do and then how to pay for it. Would that be accurate?
if I could interject there, Mayor, in the report, we identify that we will have a rate study done by the end of the year. And that rate study is something that now that we have all of our assets, both on the water side and the sanitary side, we'll do a combined rate study for sanitary and water through that. And that's going to help us modify that page, that capital improvement program based on our affordability through there. So that's the next step that we have to do within the next 6 months.
Okay. But first, I need to approve the report.
Yes.
Okay, Councilman Higgins, you had something?
I just want to say that once again, we're getting another unfunded mandate from the state, which by constitution, state constitution is illegal, but again, we have no choice but to go along with it. And just want to point that out to the public at large. This is why it's going on. That is all.
Okay, do we have anything else from council? Hearing none, then the business of the study session has concluded. We will adjourn it at 7:19 p.m.
Thank you.
I think we're muted, I think they're just. Is this a touch screen or not?
Is the council meeting over?
Who's that asking?
It sounds like council.
No.
Didn't even start.
That was a study session. We will be going into our council meeting in about 10 minutes.
I thank you for the information. Thank you. This is my first time. That's why I was asking. Thank you.
Okay.
Smarter will be
What do you mean?
Yeah, that, no, there comes. Why, John, why? What was the addition? The fire station. When we were a kid, this was a fire station? I was a kid. This is